Hey guys, this is Caleb Tallman, your co-host of the West North Carolina Friday Night Podcast, brought to you by Team FYN Sports. Alongside me in just a minute, my partner in crime, Jake West, will be with me. But we just want to touch base real quick. We know there's a lot of stuff going on with COVID right now, and unfortunately, one of those things is our game of the week between Swain and Franklin has been postponed. As many people know, our show does come to you live on Facebook, fyntv.com, and on our Twitter account. But large portions of our show are pre-recorded just based on coaches' availabilities, Jake's and I's responsibilities, setting up broadcasts and different things for Friday nights. And so instead of just completely deleting, basically 2 segments of our show that in different portions we talked about that game, we decided to leave it in there just because next week they've rescheduled it and it's going to be played next Friday, actually. So it's going to be our game of the week next Friday now. And so a lot of the stuff we talked about will be pertinent for that matchup when hopefully they get to play it on the 10th of September, next Friday. And so I hope you enjoy the rest of the show, as Jake will be joining me for the first segment in just a moment.
Jake West, Director, Team FYN Sports, joined as always by Caleb Tallman. This is the Western North Carolina edition of the Friday Night Pressbox presented by Team FYN Sports. Caleb, before we start talking about and recapping last week's games, I want to invite everybody that's watching and everybody that's listening on the podcast apps to please participate in our FYN Sports Western North Carolina Pigskin Pick'em. We're 2 weeks into this thing, and it's still anybody's game, I think. Brack Martin, your partner who calls games with you on Friday night, he's in the lead. He went 6 for 6 last week. I think he's actually only picked 1 game wrong thus far, but I think he's only ahead by 2 or 3, ahead of just a slew of other people. So we want to invite everybody to participate in that. It's a fun thing we're doing this year. We're giving away a lot of prizes at the end of the year. So tell your mom, tell your dad, tell everybody you know. Playing our Pigskin Pick'em. You can find the link in our Instagram bio. It's on our Twitter. It's also posted on Facebook. Also, before we dig in, Caleb, do you want to give away our Team FYN Sports Players of the Week awards?
Yeah. Let's go for it. We had 5 Players of the Week this past week. In future weeks, we're going to be expanding it a little bit. As we have opportunity to cover more schools and such. And just for folks out there, if you notice that we don't give your school a ton of coverage, that's probably because we don't have a reporter at your school yet. And if you're interested in something like that, contact Jake West. We're happy to have any and all people get involved and try to give all of our local schools the best coverage we can. But yeah, for our Player of the Week, from Hayesville, we had Isaac Chandler. He had a really good week against Franklin. I think he had 100 receiving yards. Also had like a 50, 60-yard touchdown. Robbinsville, Cody Klein, their kicker. I believe he had several big kicks for them in the game. Franklin, Ty Handley, their fullback / running back. He busted off, a couple 100 yards rushing, had 1 or 2 really big, long touchdowns. He had a really good week, led Franklin to victory over Hayesville. From Cherokee, we have Chase Calhoun, and from Swain, and I apologize when I butcher this name, but Nathan Bodonowicz. You got a better pronunciation for me there, Jake?
I don't know about the pronunciation, but I know he had a really big week. He caught a few passes, had 30 or 40 receiving yards. I think he had a receiving touchdown, and he also fell on a fumble in the end zone, scoring a defensive touchdown. So Bogdanowicz had a really, really big game, as did a lot of all these kids would give these awards away. So, I mean, you mentioned Cody Klein, the kicker from Robbinsville. He hit a 48-yard field goal. That's not something that we see around here in 1A, especially in Smoky Mountain Conference. There's teams that don't even kick field goals. So when you hit a 47, 48-yarder, I mean, that deserves to be recognized. You mentioned Ty Handley. Chase Calhoun from Cherokee, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. And then I think Isaac Chandler from Hayesville had a really big week and kind of helped them stay in the first half against Franklin.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of that game, I think we've got some highlights from that game and a highlight video from maybe we have some Robbinsville Brevard clips in there too. Let's roll that video, Caleb, and I know you put this thing together. Walk us through kind of just the big highlights from last week.
Here we go. So first we'll have our Franklin highlights. It was tough for me to narrow down these highlight choices. They had a lot of big plays. That right there was a huge third down pickup. Another big run there by Hanley. He had tons of those all night long. And that's the thing. McGuire hasn't had a huge night statistically yet for Franklin, but he runs their offense perfectly. I mean, just even right there, those bubble screens, he puts it in positions where whether it's handoffs, whether it's short throws, where his guys have the ability to make plays. I mean, just right there, perfect screen pass. Wide receiver doesn't have to break stride to get a big long run in there. And I'll tell you what, some of those Franklin wide receivers are pretty shifty. They put a couple of Hazel kids on the juke stick the other night. And then I know Klein had a 48-yard field goal, but that was a 46-yard field goal by Franklin's kicker.
That's the field goal that gave Franklin the lead heading into halftime.
Stiff arm of the night we just saw there.
Franklin's got some really good playmakers. Their skill players can play with anybody in this area, especially Keegan Pollock.
Yeah.
There, number 11.
Hazel ran a trick play on a punt there and got intercepted. Another big long run. That's kind of where they iced the game. They had two 50-plus yard runs in the fourth quarter that if there was any doubt left in the game, they iced it quickly. And you see those back-to-back right here. And so those two big runs really, if Hazel would have had any chance to come back, those two runs on back-to-back possessions kind of ended Hazel's thoughts of that. And then here's a couple of Hazel highlights. They really stayed with Franklin for a half, but kind of like you talked about, the depth just killed them late. But Jake McTaggart had almost 100 receiving yards in the first half. And even a really good school like Franklin with a lot of really good athletes and some of the best coaching around, it doesn't matter. McTaggart's a matchup nightmare for really anyone to guard. Caldwell had a good night, took care of the ball 2 weeks in a row without an interception, even when playing from behind. Pretty impressive for him.
Yeah, it's definitely a big leap from what we saw last year.
There's that bomb pass to Isaac Chandler that was right there at the end of the half that brought Hazel within 3. Or that was Hazel's first touchdown, excuse me. And then they got a fumble recovery on the next kickoff before, and then quickly drove it down with 2 back-to-back passes to Jake McTaggart. Touchdown catch there. As you saw, that allowed them to come close in the game. But second half was all Franklin Panthers. Nothing Hazel could do.
Mention those 2 passes to McTaggart. It looked like just 2 jump balls Caldwell just threw up.
I don't know if they're not. You talk about our area. I don't know if there's anyone in the state that's going to get McTaggart on a jump ball. It's just kind of the way it goes. Taylor McClure had some nice plays late in the game, just too much for Hazel. I'll tell you, before we hit that Ronzo highlight real quick, one time Franklin's middle linebacker was yelling, just trying to be a good leader of his DBs, and said, "Guys, I told you exactly what was going to happen." And I kind of felt bad for the board kid because a jump ball to McTaggart, I mean, unless you got another 6'5" kid playing DB, it's going to be pretty tough for them to jump with them. But hey, let's get to that Robbinsville-Brevard highlight real quick. And I think you were at that game, so you can walk us through this one, Jake.
Yeah, that was I think an upset. I think Caleb, didn't you pick Robbinsville too? I mean, you said last week you weren't going to knock Robbinsville until they lost. Well, here they go.
Yeah, I've been spot on with my predictions this year.
I mean, Robbinsville just couldn't get anything going, and there you see Brevard able to pretty much do whatever they wanted to. There's a long bomb touchdown pass right there for the Blue Devils. And, I mean, defensively, Robbinsville wasn't terrible, but there's a nice hook and ladder, but probably the best I've ever seen that executed in high school football. And there's a fake field goal that scores. But yeah, I mentioned Robbinsville's defense wasn't terrible, but their offense, they just really struggled to hang on to the football and couldn't really make anything happen. I think they put the ball on the ground 11 times. They didn't lose it 11 times, but they just had so much miscommunication, so much stuff go wrong for them that I mean, it's not often you see Robbinsville play in a 14-13 game, and that's definitely a game that they should have won. Before we get into just really dig into recapping these games, Caleb, there was a development in the NTHSAA and some stuff that had to do with charter schools. In this first segment, do you want to take us through that and kind of what this is going to mean for the NCHSAA?
Yeah, it's been going on all summer. We've heard that the NCHSA, they're going to get disbanded. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen as of currently written. It is HB 91, House Bill 91, is going to currently, as it is written, allow NCHSA to remain in place but require significant changes. And we're not going to get political on this show today, Jake, but I do think it was a good job by politicians, Democrat and Republican alike, because high school OT did a poll, and I think it was something crazy like 80% of athletic directors and principals and school boards that were interviewed or were polled, did not want the NCHSAA to be disbanded. And so I think, instead of just completely getting rid of it, they're going to require significant changes and a lot more oversight, which I think is appropriate. I think we've all known that the NCHSAA, it'd be pretty tough if we just got rid of it completely. That would leave us with nothing at all. And then you'd be talking about politicians running it completely, which is a scary thought, especially with politicians getting elected in cycles and stuff. You don't want your high school athletic formats changing every 2 to 4 years. But basically what we're seeing is one of the big things is that as currently written, the details on it weren't really specific, but basically they're saying if you're a charter or private school, which I don't know how they'll end up categorizing those, it's going to move you up to 2A automatically. So basically the way I read it, it would get rid of all charter and private schools in 1A athletics. And then what I think you see happen from that, if that was to happen, then what you would see is that the 2A schools would be the ones dealing with them, right? And then you'd see the 1A and 2A schools would realize the issue of charters and privates. Then we might see a different vote from the NCHSA board of directors and the membership, because what has happened in past when they've done votes on should the charters and privates get to stay in 1A, should there be a modifier or a multiplier to get them on level playing ground? And what happens is the 3A and 4A and 2A schools just didn't vote. And if you took the percentage, you'd see the 1A schools voted, yeah, we want rid of them to make it a fair playing field. But then just there were so many no votes, even though those that voted, it would have been an over 50%. It just didn't, nothing came from it. And so I think if you move them up to 2A, then you got over 50% of the membership, that's either had an issue with it or will currently have an issue with it. So that's interesting. Some of the other things, there's going to be accountability and fair play rules involved. And what that would basically mean is, first off, right now the NCHSA uses certain proprietors and certain vendors basically because it's become a really big cash profit for them. And it limits people. It limits what schools can do. They'll say, oh, can we get so-and-so to do this video or audio? And the NCHSA says, no, you have to use what we tell you to use, that are usually really expensive. And what has happened is, these vendors that the NCHSA has exclusive contracts with, the NCHSA is making money from those exclusive contracts, but then they're charging the schools too much. Like, for example, we'll use our organization, Jake, Team FYN Sports and FYN TV. We did playoff games all the way up to the state semifinals last year, right? And that was only because the local schools didn't have those NCHSA contracts, mainly because a lot of that technology from NFHS Network hasn't made its way this far west. And so we didn't get to do the state championship game broadcast-wise because NCHSA had sold its rights. And even though schools, I don't think it's a far reach to say, do you think Murphy would rather had you and Tim Tao on the call for the state championship game, or the random broadcasters that had seen the team for the first time all year, and so that's an interesting thing. And then also they're talking about lowering the fees, the annual fees that the NCHSA charges schools to be a part of the membership. So what I'm seeing, I think there's still a lot of stuff to get worked out in it, Jake. But I think what we have right now is I think they're moving in the right direction. And that's my opinion. I think reform is always needed. And then the big thing is I think there's going to be transparency. Right now, the NCHSAA, like their money and how schools get handled, there's no appeals for certain fines that get made. And it's just the NCHSAA is a dictatorship. And I think it's going to make it, if this bill goes through, it's going to make it more of, fair for everybody, and we'll be able to see what's going on behind the scenes. And from what I've read, they expect this to pass the Senate, and so that would put it on Roy Cooper's desk, and then go from there. Who knows what would happen?
Yeah, I mean, if you're not moving forward, then you're moving backwards. I don't think it was ever going to happen where the NCHSAA was completely abolished. I think that was just kind of they went and said that because they knew something needed to be changed. I don't think anybody really ever thought NCHSA was not going to be a thing anymore. But
no, I think it was in the bill, and quickly removed. Yeah. I think it was more of this is a wake up call. You're going to have to take this serious.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a lot of things, not just, the biggest thing for us in our area is, I think take Hayesville, for example. I think they lost in basketball and baseball to the same charter school in the playoffs.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing for us in our area, but also the organization as a whole, I think, has a problem with transparency. Like you said, they're worth however so many millions of dollars. And how are we seeing that money? We're not seeing it. As well as I do, somebody's grandma's got to run the concession stand. So they're missing their grandson play ball because we don't have enough money to pay people to run the concession stands, and we have to have volunteers for this and volunteers for that. Meanwhile, we're having to pay the NCHSAA just to be a part of the organization, and somehow they've accumulated all these $50 million. I just think that money could be allocated in different ways and really help its member schools, instead of just having just such a large net worth. I think the money that it's being put into the NCHSAA and the money, even the money we're paying to be able to broadcast playoff games, like you mentioned, the fee that we're paying to be able to broadcast playoff games, the school doesn't get that. That goes to the NCHSAA. So, and
that's one of the things too, is they're saying you're talking about how much money the NCHSAA has in the bank. And what this will do is right now, percentages vary. I couldn't find good information on it, mainly because the NCHSA doesn't really tell people. And in theory, I'm not saying this happened. They could charge one school a certain percentage, and then the other school a different percentage for their ticket gate and playoffs. But what this bill would propose right now is that the max the NCHSA could be required, or would require schools as a part of the state playoff gate money would be 33%. So at least it puts a cap on it. And then the interesting part of it would be is that if the NCHSAA ends up in the bank with 2.5 times their yearly budget, so 250% of a 1-year budget, then the max they could charge schools for playoff gate would be 20%. And that to me just makes logical sense. That you're saying if this school, if we have enough money to run for the next 2.5 years, then we need to charge schools less money than what we're currently charging them. And so it just, to me, it's logical. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with it. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, Roy Cooper could veto this, and or it could not pass the Senate, or there could be changes to it. We're far from done with this. I don't expect to see many of these changes affect football season or really affect this school year whatsoever.
Yeah, I agree. That's good insight, Caleb. Thanks for that. Let's take a break, and let's start recapping some of the week 2 football games, and see the surprises and the upsets and kind of what happened in week 2. Let's take a quick break. For Caleb Tallman, this is Jake West. Watching the Friday Night Pressbox Western North Carolina edition, presented by Team FYN Sports.
At Circuit World, we offer a wide selection of major appliances, name brands like Whirlpool, LG, Frigidaire, and more. Looking for furniture? Come by and browse our showroom or check out the Endless Aisle, a touchscreen kiosk with thousands of options. Need electronics, gaming computers, laptops, desktops, tablets? We have it all. OLED or QLED, 4K or high def. We have the selection to get you the TV of your dreams. And don't forget, at Circuit World, your credit is always good. So ask about our convenient payment options and 120 days, same as cash. Come see us today at one of our 5 area locations.
Hey girl, back so soon?
Yeah.
Third time this morning.
Feeling too familiar with the bathroom these days? It's not just you.
Hey girl, look who made it 15 minutes.
At Erlanger Urology, we make it easy to talk about overactive bladder and treatments that work.
Hey girl, you not coming in?
No, I'm good.
Well, okay, I'll be here, cause I'm stuck.
Learn more at itsnotjustyou.com. Erlanger Urology.
In 1981, Reed Nicholson began selling tires out of an old barn in Mineral Bluff. Little did he know that he had just laid the groundwork for the most trusted names in automotive services in the Blue Ridge area. In 1997, Nicholson Tire Center became what it is today, holding the same values of faith, family, and great customer service. 2 locations to serve you, and the Blue Ridge location is currently expanding to offer fast service and the largest U-Haul provider in Georgia. Nicholson Tire Center, Blue Ridge, and Mineral Bluff.
Welcome back to the Friday Night Press Box, Western North Carolina edition, presented by Team FYN Sports. Jake West here with Caleb Tallman. Caleb, let's dive into the Cherokee versus Avery County game. I think that's a game that was kind of up in the air. I think people were kind of leaning towards Cherokee winning. I don't think they were leaning towards Cherokee winning by as the margin that they did, as Cherokee won 39-21 over Avery County. Anything you picked up on from that game?
I just think, Cherokee took care of business. I think a lot of people expected them to be the better team coming into the game. And I think they proved that. I think, Don Bradley had a really good night, 10 for 13 passing. You'd almost expect him to pass more than 13 times, but I know we don't calculate high school quarterback passer rating all the time, but I would bet to say that he had probably a pretty high rating, 10 for 13, 184 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's pretty solid. And then I think Cherokee's defense, while it wasn't perfect, did enough to keep Avery from, piling up a lot of points. And Cherokee's offense, as we know, Jake, can be really, really potent. And so I think that's how we're going to see Cherokee beat a lot of teams this year is via their high-scoring offense. They're spread it out, as opposed to their defense. But similar to Hayesville, the other spread it out team in the conference is, you can score with people, but your defense has got to do enough to let your offense outscore people. It doesn't do you a whole lot of good if you're just going touchdown for touchdown. And I think Cherokee's defense held up well enough in this week.
Yeah, Cherokee's defense held Avery to 266 total yards of offense, and Cherokee's offense nearly doubled that, ended up with 560 or 570 total yards of offense, including 376 yards on the ground. So that's definitely not what I expected from a Cherokee team. Like you said, I would expect Don Bradley to throw it more than 13 times. But when you gain 376 yards on the ground, I don't guess you have to throw it more than 13 times. Cherokee and Avery ran basically the same amount of plays. I think Avery ran 63 plays. Cherokee ran 62. Like I said, the real story is in the yardage totals. 266 yards of total offense compared to 560 yards of total offense. That's going to win you the game every time. Chase Calhoun, sophomore running back for Cherokee, rushed 13 times for 25 yards and 3 touchdowns, as well as a slew of other brave running backs kept the ball on the ground and got them up to that 376-yard mark. But
I guess Calhoun's that goal line vulture. He's that guy that everyone wants to have in fantasy football because when they get down to the goal line, he's the touchdown dude.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns only 25 yards. But a good showing from the sophomore running back. Good showing from Cherokee as a whole. Going forward, I think they're gonna really be able to compete. And that Avery County, more numbers than Cherokee probably roster wise, but a really good showing from the Braves. And as always, Don Bradley, kids as good as advertised. Let's get into Swain County versus Smoky Mountain. That's another upset we saw Friday night. I think Smoky Mountain was favored heading into this game, even if it was by just half a point or something like that. Swain County's offense just never let Smoky Mountain breathe. I think Smoky Mountain was, in their first two games, they threw the ball around a lot. They weren't able to do that at all. Let's see where the numbers are here. Swain's defense held Smoky Mountain to 169 total yards of offense and forced 7 fumbles. That you're gonna win every game. I don't care who it's against. If you can hold a team under 200 yards of offense and force 7 fumbles.
Yeah.
Swain recovered 3 of those fumbles, including one that Bogdanowicz fell on in the end zone, adding their 3rd touchdown of the night to make it 21-7. Definitely not what I expected. I expected it to be closer than that, for sure, because I thought Smoky Mountain was going to be a pretty good team this year, and maybe they are. Maybe Swain's just that good. But what were your takeaways from this?
Well, I think, like you said, I think the fumbles were a really big deal. Kind of like, I think, and we'll get to that game in a minute. I think a lot of people expected Robbinsville to beat Brevard, but Robbinsville kind of couldn't get out of their own way on Friday night. It sounds like, to me, that's kind of what happened with Smoky Mountain with their fumble issues. And I really think got to give a lot of credit to Swain. I think they're still tracking up. You know, that's kind of what we were talking about last week. Is this would be a really good measuring stick game from them. And hey, if they kept it close, you know, maybe they're challenging. And if they beat Smoky Mountain, well, maybe we got something to look out for. You know, Neil Blankenship back with the headset on and leading his team. Their numbers are way up from last year. You know, teams like Robbinsville, Swain, and Murphy over the past 25 years, yeah, they all have had down years. But the one thing I think we can say for all of them in our lifetime, Jake, has any of those 3 schools been down for more than just a few years? No. And so I think what we're seeing out of Swain is this is the expectation for Swain, not last year. Last year was an anomaly. That's not their program. Swain, similar to Murphy and similar to Robbinsville, I think a lot of people were expecting Swain to get beat last Friday night, but I have a feeling that those Swain players, the Swain coaching staff, and the Swain fan base, those are games they expect to go in and win because they're Swain County. They're not some other program. And so I think, you know, they say water comes to level. I think Swain's level is an above average program. And in their really good years, they're state championship contenders, conference championship contenders. And so, you know, I think especially we'll talk about that game more in a minute, but as we get closer to their Franklin game, I think people need to put last year out of their mind. That's not the Swain County program that they are. This team this year and the team from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that's the expectation over there in Swain County.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned Blankenship being back at the helm. He pulled one of his old tricks out of his bag on Friday night when Swain was backed up on their 10-yard line. It was like 4th and 20. He just told his team to take the safety, and they did. So that way they got, instead of punting from the 7 or the 8, wherever they were, they got to punt the ball away from the 20-yard line, and it was a good enough punt after the safety to put Smoky Mountain back in their own territory instead of giving them the ball on Swain's own 8-yard line. So, I mean, there's not a lot of coaches in football in general that would think to do something like that. That's just how good Blankenship is and how different he makes this team. The interim coach last year, he did a great job with what he had, but you can just tell by the numbers Swain has. People want to play for Neil Blankenship. I mean, that's the name Neil Blankenship carries a lot of weight, kind of like Coach David Gentry did. People just want to play for those two guys. So I think that's got as much to do with anything as Swain's winning season is going to be this year. It's got to do with Neil Blankenship being back there and getting those kids to kind of buy into what he's selling. And you mentioned the state of the program. The state of the program over there at Swain County, the Maroon Machine is back. And if they win Friday night against Franklin, they'll be all the way back. If they win Friday night against Franklin, they'll be the favorite to win the conference.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
Let's go back into Robbinsville versus Brevard. Robbinsville falls 16-15 at Brevard. I was at that game, and someone said to me after the game, when Robbinsville has over 100 yards passing and 300 yards on the ground, they win with those numbers 99% of the time. And that's exactly what they had. Over 140 yards from gross passing and 300 yards on the ground, and yet they still lost. The amount of miscommunication they had, like I mentioned earlier, offensively was just something you don't expect to see from D. Walsh coach team. They just were all out of sorts. Caleb, is there anything you want to add after watching the highlights and going back and looking at the stats?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing, kind of like Hayesville had issues against Inca a couple weeks ago, and they couldn't get out of their own way earlier in the game. Let's give Brevard credit. Brevard was right there the whole game, and they executed on the mistakes Robbinsville made. And the one thing I'll say for Robbinsville is, you know what? Especially this early in the year, especially when you probably every single team every week has a player or two missing with COVID. I'm assuming. I'm not saying that I know that. I'm just that's the era we're living in. They're in an early part of their schedule, and we said this in the summer. We've said this in the preseason. And I'll say it again now. Robbinsville has the toughest non-conference schedule, probably of anyone in all of Western North Carolina, not just our conference. And so when you look at it, it's hard to get high school kids up for a game every single Friday. D. Walsh probably gives some of the best motivational speeches around, but it's hard to get your kids to play at their top level week after week after week. And so it just appears to me that they weren't ready for this road trip. I'm not saying it's a coaching issue. I'm not saying it's a player issue, but let's remember that, the guys leading the way for Robbinsville are two sophomore running backs.
Yep.
They still have time to grow. Except for Robbinsville's got school canceled, I have a feeling D. Walsh gave them some footballs to carry around, and they're probably not allowed to put them down for a while we work on these ball security issues. But it just happens. It's high school kids. I still think Robbinsville's right there in the top three of the conference. Barring more turnovers every single game, I still got Robbinsville pegged as the favorite.
I think we're not going to talk about COVID on this show. We're going to talk about it as little as possible, just because everybody hears it from every other show you watch. So we're not going to talk about it. But Robbinsville did have their game canceled this coming week for week 3 because of COVID issues, and they already canceled their next week game against Smoky Mountain because of COVID issues. But we hope that they can schedule a game within the next few weeks, so they will get to play another non-conference game before conference play. The two biggest things that stuck out to me in this game was the lack of communication, one, like I mentioned, and just the fact that they elected to pooch kick after scoring the go-ahead touchdown. With a minute on the clock, they decided to pooch kick it. When you've got a kicker in Cody Klein that can put it through the end zone 10 times out of 10, I don't understand that coaching decision to pooch kick it and give Brevard the ball with that good a field position. I guess you're wanting to run the clock out, and you've relied on your defense all night long, so why not put them in one more position to where they can win you the ball game? But I don't know. I just think you kick it deep and give your defense a lot more room to work with that little amount of time on the clock. But who knows what the reasoning for that call was. That's why I'm sitting here talking to you and not on the sidelines on Friday night. Yeah. But as we mentioned, Robbinsville doesn't have a game scheduled for the next 4 weeks. Hopefully they can pick up one in those 2 scheduled bye weeks that they had. Caleb, tell us about your game at Hayesville versus Franklin and kind of what you saw in that one. I think you caught up with Coach Brooks
Yeah. Let's start off with that. I've got just a short interview. This is our post-game interview that I had with Coach Brooks. It was pretty cool because he also had his son Wrigley there in the interview that you'll see. Caleb Tallman, Team F-Line Sports. We're here with Coach Josh Brooks of Franklin. Coach, big win tonight, 44-14. Y'all came struggling into the half just a little bit. Hazel scored 2 straight. Looked like they're going to make it a ball game. But tell me about your team's second half effort.
Well, at the end of the day, I spent too much time in the second quarter yelling at the officials. And we came back out in the second half a little better focused. Didn't turn the ball over but one time. Played really, really good on defense and come away with a big team win.
And after 2 straight wins over Smoky Mountain Conference opponents, y'all are getting ready to go into a little bit tougher stretch of your schedule. Tell us what you think about who you got coming up.
Well, we travel to Swain next week. Obviously, a tough beer team, a physical team, and then we get into conference play, East Henderson and Tuscola. So, yeah, it's going to get tougher, no doubt. I feel like we're making strides and improving, and we just got to continue to do that. Tell us
just a little bit what you thought about that Hayesville team y'all just played. They're a team that's on the up and up coming through. Y'all obviously dominated tonight's game, but they had a few stellar performances as well.
Oh, man, I can't say enough about Coach McClure and his staff and those kids. They played their hearts out. I think they had 17 or 18 kids dressed. Never quit. They had a good game plan. Did some really good things. They'll continue to be successful and move in the right direction.
Well, we appreciate it, Coach. Team F-Line Sports is going to be all over. We're going to try and get a lot more Franklin Panther coverage throughout the year. We appreciate Coach Brooks and Wrigley joining us for this little interview. Thanks, guys.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you what, I love Coach Brooks over at Franklin. Guy's a class act. Never says anything bad that I've heard about anyone, really. But just a good old-fashioned ball coach. And I tell you what, he's got his kids ready to play every single Friday night. And here's the deal. Just like he said, he's only dressed out, I think, 17 kids, got a couple of injuries. I think Hazel was playing right with them for a half. Came back, almost tied it up by halftime if it wasn't for Franklin's kicker earlier in the second quarter hitting a 46-yarder. But they played right with them. And then just the second half, Franklin was rotating linemen on the offense and defensive line. They had multiple backs they were handing it to, and they just started wedge blocking. And, more or less, they just ran it up the gut the whole second half and really just pushed Hayesville around just physically on the line of scrimmage. But I would say that's probably the most physical team at the line of scrimmage Hazel's going to see all year. I think Murphy might have something to say about that, but I tell you what, Franklin is a pretty dang good team up front. But I think when you look at Hayesville, they're having some standout performances. It's really fun to see because you don't see it in the Smoky Mountain Conference much, but they're becoming a pass-first team, and why not? Logan Caldwell, through 2 games, has a 62% completion percentage, has thrown for 540 yards. He's averaging 270 yards a game. Thrown for 4 touchdowns, and doesn't have a single interception yet. And then when you look at his receivers, at this point in the year, we've had 3 different kids have 100 yards receiving through 2 games. But right now, our receiving is spread out. We've got a kid with 84 yards, another one with 91 yards, and we got 3 kids over 100 yards. And one of those performances was by Jake McTaggart. He got we'll just say wrongfully thrown out in the first game. I'll leave it at that because we've already talked about that. He came out, had 6 receptions for 109 yards and a touchdown. If you watch that highlight video, he had a couple of jump balls that only he could catch. And I tell you what, I don't care who we're playing. He's a matchup nightmare for people, Jake. And if Coach Brooks can't hold him under 100 receiving yards with some of the talent that he has, I don't know what team can.
Yeah, Hayesville had some bright spots for sure, especially in the first half. It's good to see McTaggart back on the football field and playing this year. It'll be fun to see where he finally chooses to go to college at. And I hope he sticks around for the basketball season because that's just incredible to watch when he's on the hardwood. But Franklin they definitely struggled in the first half. But in the second half, they kind of just proved what they are and what they're all about. They just went into halftime and regrouped and said, okay, if McGuire's not on tonight, we're going to give it to Hanley and let him run it up the gut. And if Hanley's not on the night, we'll give it to the next man up. We'll give it to Watts or whatever. I mean, Franklin's just so deep. I know they're in 3A now, but I think they can really make a run.
Yeah, I think if they were in 2A, you're looking at a team that probably is a 2A state contender. 3A might be a little tougher, but don't tell Brooks and his team that they like to go out and compete every single Friday night.
Yeah, a lot of good things from both Hayesville and Franklin last week. Let's take a quick break, Caleb, and we'll come back. We'll talk about the Week 3 games coming up. Jake West for Caleb Tallman. This is the Friday Night Press Box presented by Team FYN Sports.
At Circuit World, we offer a wide selection of major appliances, name brands like Whirlpool, LG, Frigidaire, and more. Looking for furniture? Come by and browse our showroom or check out the endless aisle, a touchscreen kiosk with thousands of options. Need electronics, gaming computers, laptops, desktops, tablets? We have it all. OLED or QLED, 4K or high def. We have the selection to get you the TV of your dreams. And don't forget, at Circuit World, your credit is always good. So ask about our convenient payment options and 120 days, same as cash. Come see us today at one of our 5 area locations.
Hey, girl. Back so soon?
Yeah.
Third time this morning.
Feeling too familiar with the bathroom these days? It's not just you.
Hey, girl. Look who made it 15 minutes.
At Erlanger Urology, we make it easy to talk about overactive bladder and treatments that work.
Hey, girl. You not coming in?
No, I'm good.
Well, okay. I'll be here, because I'm stuck.
Learn more at itsnotjustyou.com. Erlanger Urology.
In 1981, Reed Nicholson began selling tires out of an old barn in Mineral Bluff. Little did he know that he had just laid the groundwork for the most trusted names in automotive services in the Blue Ridge area. In 1997, Nicholson Tire Center became what it is today, holding the same values of faith, family, and great customer service. 2 locations to serve you, and the Blue Ridge location is currently expanding to offer fast service and the largest U-Haul provider in Georgia. Nicholson Tire Center, Blue Ridge, and Mineral Bluff.
Jake West, Director of Team FYN Sports, joined by Caleb Tallman. Caleb, let's get right into these Week 3 games. I think we've only got a couple because of cancellations, and hopefully we do get to play these 1, 2, 3, 4 Smoky Mountain Conference games that we do have. Hopefully by the time Friday night rolls around, we do get to play all these games. But let's start off with a team that did not play last week. Let's start off with the Murphy Bulldogs going up against Georgia Forest Christian. Brandon Stevens, our Murphy reporter, he caught up with Coach Watson last night to get his thoughts on this upcoming game and kind of what Murphy was able to do during the bye week. So let's roll that video of what Coach Joseph Watson had to say about Georgia Forest Christian and about this game coming up tomorrow night.
Murphy Bulldog fans, coming up, we have the Georgia Force, and to tell us a little bit about the preparations and getting ready for Georgia Force, our first home game, Coach Joseph Watson. Coach, first of all, we've had 2 weeks to get ready. Are we healed? Are we fortified? Are we ready to go?
Yeah, I think so. I think we're coming to this about as healthy as we have been. The 2 weeks kind of helped us. A lot of learning going on, a lot of correcting a lot of mistakes from the Franklin game. So yeah, we're ready, ready to get after it, ready to come off the hill, ready to play another game.
It looks like your biggest opponent this period has been Mother Nature, keeping you in the gym, and and you don't get the feel of the grass and the sod underneath you. So today, first practice, how'd that feel to get back out in Mother Nature?
It was good. So I think last year we kind of had enough of practicing in the gym, so we had a lot of that last year with the spring season. The weather is terrible, but we were able to get outside today. Had a really good session today. Thought we played really physical, started playing fast, started figuring out what we're doing a little bit more, and had a good day.
We talked to Kellen a little earlier, but he looks crisp. It looks like everybody's moving, and in particular today, we had really good spirited practice.
Yeah, we really, boys are ready to play. They're tired. I think, having a loss 2 weeks ago to Franklin and being off a week's they're tired of it. They're tired of hearing about it. They're tired of hitting each other, and they're ready to hit somebody else for a change.
Let's talk about hitting Georgia Force. We know they're going to come after you, and probably if they did 100 plays, 90 of them will be passes.
Absolutely.
They're a little thin up front, but they're good.
They are good. This is not your typical homeschool team that you would think of being homeschool. They're from Buford, and they kind of pull from a lot of kids. So they do have some kids. They have some athletes out there. Their quarterback is really good. They have 2 really good receivers. The running back plays middle linebacker for them, and he played against us last time we played. And he was one of their best players then, and he's only gotten better. But yeah, they're gonna sling it around. It's gonna be kind of a 7-on-7 scenario. Hopefully, we're able to get some pressure on the quarterback, be able to create some turnovers.
So the big question: how do we get the ball in the end zone and keep them out of it?
That's a good question. That's what we always try to do, right. Brandon. We, try to get stops on defensively and continue to move the ball on them offensively, be physical with them up front.
And also, I noticed they kind of have some speed. So are we going to simulate a little speed because I saw Kellen more in shotgun, or I don't want to give away all the secrets?
No, it's not give away too much, but yeah, they can run. They got some kids that can run, and they do a really good job of spreading the field out, creating space for their athletes and getting them the ball in space. And the quarterback does a great job getting the ball to them. So we're gonna be chasing.
Bottom line, last question is first home game. You told the guys today going to be a lot of people here to watch. So are we ready?
Absolutely.
Are we for that?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're going to be ready.
All right.
We'll have them ready. There's very few times that you see a Murphy team that's not ready to play at home, and I don't expect anything different.
Georgia Force is our opponent. Coach Joseph Watson to tell us a little bit about preparation for this week. I'm Brandon Stevens on Fetcher News saying, go Bulldogs.
Great insight from Coach Watson there on what he expects this week. Thanks, Coach, for taking time out of your day and always being good to us media members. I know we can definitely get on Coach's nerves at some points. But just from doing my own research into this Georgia Force team, they're a pretty solid team. They've got some really good athletes. I think last year, Tim Tao, one of our reporters over in Georgia, he did an interview with the head coach. I think Stephen Riley is his name, the head coach of Georgia Force Christian, and he kind of told us how Georgia Force got their players and what Georgia Force was. And then Georgia Force last year went on to win the homeschool national championship. They were 8-3, I think. And they have a lot of good athletes, as I mentioned. This year they're 1-0. They didn't allow a point against Anderson, South Carolina, in their season opener. They're 8-3 last year. They have some really good athletes, as I mentioned. Their quarterback, Caleb Flights, 6'3" junior quarterback who played wide receiver last year, but he can really sling it. He was 9 for 19 in their opening game for 133 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also plays defense, and last year he had 4 picks, so he's going to hurt you on both sides of the ball. Caleb, I don't know if you've got to dive into Georgia Force and what to expect from them, but what's kind of your thoughts surrounding Murphy's second game of the year in week 3?
Well, I think Murphy's got a lot of questions they've got to answer, and I don't think that's normal for a Bulldog team. But, we talked about it. No need to panic yet. You lose this game, though, things change. And I'll be honest, usually you say homeschool team on the schedule, and you're like, all right, well, hey, even the Hazel's and Andrews of the world say we're going to win those homeschool games. Well, that's not the case with this game, Jake. This team is no joke, and it's hard to know because they won a homeschool national championship last year. But who did they bring back? Are they better than last year? Or are they worse than last year? Because these homeschool teams they play by a different set of rules. Hey, and we put them on their schedule because it's a good experience for all involved. Usually, they could bring in new players week to week. Most high school teams don't typically do that, and I'm not saying Georgia Force does that, but obviously they have one of the better homeschool programs. And I, honest to goodness, I think this really may be a game with Murphy. But like I said, I think Murphy's got some questions to answer. And you might know some of those answers. You're a Murphy guy, Jake. Who's playing quarterback Friday night? Because I like Kellen Rumfelt, great young kid. But when he played against Franklin 2 weeks ago, he was not the Kellen Brumfelt that was throwing the ball around the state championship game. And that's no discredit to Kellen. He just wasn't fully healthy yet. And so if you don't have a fully healthy Kellen, maybe you stick him at another position just to have his leadership out there on the field, and you roll with Cole Laney. Or maybe, as much as it sounds crazy to say, if Kellen's not effective early, maybe you have a short trigger and you're ready to put Cole in the game. But as much as I hate to say it, if Murphy can't come out and silence the haters in this game, as you've mentioned, there will be panic if they lose this game, Jake. And there's no doubts about it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. This is a game where Murphy's got to prove it. Coach, first-year head coach Joseph Watson, he's going to have the kids ready. But one thing's for sure, they're not playing Bishop Sycamore. They're playing Georgia Forest Christian, who's an actual school. We mentioned homeschool national champion. So you're right. It could very well be a game. If Murphy comes out and plays like they did against Franklin, this will be a game Friday night. And this should not be a game. Murphy has to come out 100%, rolling, firing on all cylinders. And I was talking with some guys earlier in the week about Kellen and the whole quarterback situation. I think Kellen's had enough time to heal, and if he comes out and isn't 100%, I think mostly it's the mental aspect of it. So I think he needs more time on the field to get over that hump, maybe mentally. And I think he got lit up against Franklin at the very end of the game. Probably the hardest hit he's going to take all year. And he bounced right back up from that. So I think that helped him a lot. Maybe got through that mental block that he had. But you're right. If he doesn't come out, maybe Coach Watson does have him on a short leash, and they do put Cole in there at quarterback. Cole really turned some heads and impressed in the offseason. So the whole quarterback situation, I don't know. I think I do know one thing. I know Kellen has the tendency to come out and shut people up. So maybe that's what he'll do come Friday night. But I think everybody's thoughts are the same in this one. Murphy has to come out. They have to play 4 quarters of smash mouth football all the way through, and they have to show that even though Coach Gentry's not there, they're still the Murphy Bulldogs. And I do believe that 100%. They didn't lose a step when Coach Watson took over. They're still Murphy, and they're still going to be on top. And I think that they're going to prove it come Friday night against a good Georgia Force team.
And I think they have to, Jake, because it is a good Georgia Force team. I'm looking at their stats from their first game. They're not some typical 15 player shallow homeschool bunch. They had 18 different players make tackles in their first game, so obviously they're pretty deep. And I know, and you're a Murphy guy. And as much as it'll be the same thing when Coach Cottrell retires one day from Hayesville basketball. As much as you want to say, oh, we're still the Murphy Bulldogs, Gentry was a legend for a reason. And Watson, as good as Watson might be, he's got a lot of new members on the coaching staff. And I think one of the best things you saw from Murphy over the last 30 years or whatever Gentry was there for was quality control. That's not something we talk about a ton in football, but quality control is important. And it's the small things, like executing backside blocks, having play discipline if you're the backside defensive end. If you're a DB and you're in cover 2 or cover 3 and you're supposed to be one of the deep covers, you don't let anyone behind you. And that's the type of quality control that Murphy's had in their program for decades now. And that wasn't all 100% David Gentry. It was guys like Thomas Nelson, guys like Coach Thompson, and guys like Coach Watson when he was in different roles, not just as the head guy. Murphy's got some questions to answer, and if they don't come out and win this game, we're going to look at them differently, and maybe they're not that top dog anymore. But I think you're right. I think we didn't talk about our picks yet. I picked them in this game. I do think they're going to come out and silence some people, but the whole narrative changes if they don't.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, I'm going with Murphy in this one too, but kind of changing gears a little bit. Let's go to another homeschool team. Talk about Cherokee versus North Georgia Falcons homeschool. Murphy played them a few years ago. I think this puts Cherokee on the right track. Cherokee rattles off their second win in a row. Don Bradley has another great game, and my pick's Cherokee by two scores at least.
Yeah, I've got the same pick. I don't know. it's so hard to know, Jake, with these homeschool teams. Georgia Force, that we were just talking about, they're a little bit better known commodity, which helps Murphy just a little bit. And they're probably a school you can actually find some film on. But like the North Georgia Falcons, they started so-and-so at quarterback last week. Who knows who's starting at quarterback this week, even if you do have film on them. And so it's hard to scout the unknown, but typically just the average level of St. Cherokee will have their way with them. And that's who I picked as well.
Andrews hosts North Buncombe. Andrews did not play last week because they were missing some kids. I think they had COVID issues. That's the big question surrounding this game is COVID. Both teams have already had COVID issues this year. Hopefully this game will get played. And I think if it does get played, Andrews has a very good chance of winning this game. Caleb, I don't know if you know the team it was. I think it was Madison. North Buncombe played Madison last week, and Madison won their first game in the past 4 years over North Buncombe. So obviously North Buncombe in a down year, and I think that gives Andrews a really good chance if they have all their kids come Friday night. And I hope they do. The conference is better when it's good top to bottom, and Hayesville's proved that they're going to be good. Let's hope Andrews can keep their players good and healthy, and that they can also compete in the Smoky Mountain Conference this year.
Yeah, I do know just a little bit about North Buncombe just based on some Max Prep stats. I do know in their first game, they were starting a first-time quarterback, and he threw 3 interceptions. And so, maybe he does the same thing against Andrews, but I think it was one of those situations, quarterback in his first start struggled a little bit. North Buncombe's a bigger team than Andrews, though. They've got 35 on their roster, and I think North Buncombe is down talent-wise from where they were the last year to 2 years when they were a playoff team at the 2A, 3A level. But I just think one of the big things you're going to see, we talked about Andrews possibly having some COVID issues. I hope they've got every single kid healthy and out there. That's what we hope for on Friday nights for all teams. But, I think depth's going to be an issue. And I think if Andrews can't get an early lead, they're going to struggle. But at the end of the day, I just went with North Buncombe. A bigger school for my pick. Just I think the depth by the time you get to the third or fourth quarter is going to be a struggle for Andrews.
I think my pick's going to be Andrews. I think that Isaac Weaver is going to maybe he doesn't go for nearly 300 yards on the ground, but if he has his line healthy and he's healthy, I think he's going to go for 200 yards, 150 200 yards every week. So I'm going to go with Coach Phillips and the Wildcats pull the upset off over the much bigger school in North Buncombe. Our game of the week is going to be Franklin at Swain. We talked about both these teams earlier. This is a game that if Swain starts the season 3-0 with wins over Franklin and Smoky Mountain, watch out. Swain's going to be the favorite to win the conference, I think, without a doubt. Especially with the showing Robbinsville just put out and Murphy just put out in their last games. Also, I'd say the same thing for Franklin. If Franklin comes out and wins this game, they're going to be poised to make a deep run in the playoffs. So this is definitely a big-time prove-it game for both these teams. Swain starting off 2-0, definitely not what I expected, not what anybody expected. But on the other hand, if either team gets beat by a large margin, they take a big step back in my mind just in terms of how good they are. I mean, if Swain comes out and Franklin just dominates them, then I'm going to go back and be like, okay, well, Swain is not as good as I thought they were. They are kind of what we expected in the preseason. But if Swain comes out and keeps this thing close and maybe even wins, then I'm going to say that Swain's definitely changed my mind. But this is definitely a prove-it game for them. Come Friday night. What say you, Caleb?
The one thing you said, and it depends depending on what the score is. I personally think Murphy and Hayes are going to be pretty good football teams this year, and they both got beat pretty soundly by Franklin. And I think first and foremost, we have to say Franklin's just a really, really good football team, one of the best in all of Western North Carolina. I think that'll prove out over the course of the season. And so if Swain gets beat handily, I don't necessarily know that it doesn't mean that they can't be a top-tier team in the conference, in my opinion. But I picked Franklin in this game myself, just because after watching them dominate Murphy and Hayesville, I think Franklin's got something rolling right now, and it's going to be really hard to stop. And I think Swain's young quarterback, Lillard, I think he's getting a lot better. But kind of as you saw, they didn't have a ton of offense against Smoky Mountain. And I don't care how good their defense is, Franklin's going to put up some points because they have so many different ways they can do it. Outside run, power inside run, fullback runs, bubble screens. If you don't cover over the top, Murphy saw it. Even Murphy's all-state corner saw it. McGuire will beat you over the top, no issues. And so Franklin's going to put up 2 or 3 touchdowns at least, if not more. And so even if, Swain's defense is really dialed in, they're going to have to find a way to put up some points. And I just don't know that Swain's offense is where their defense is this early in the year. And so I still think Swain really might be looking at a team that can challenge for the top of the conference. I just don't think they're quite ready to come out and win a game like this. But if I'm wrong, just like you said, boy, you better watch out for the Maroon Devils.
Yeah, I think the score last week, 21-9, kind of a little bit misleading. Swain got a lot of help in that game. They're going to have a lot of help to beat Franklin. My pick's going to be Franklin in this one, but I really hope Swain can keep it close. I hope this is as good a game as we think it's going to be. But I still think Franklin takes the win here. One of the big things on Swain's side this week, though, they're playing at home. I don't know if you hate it as much as I do going over there to Bryson City and going to that football field. But it's not a good place to go play. It's not fun for opposing teams to go play there.
Now that I'm a reporter, not a player, I do love going to Swain, Jake, because every time I go to Swain, I eat at Neighbors. But as a player, probably not the best place in the world to have to go play at. They definitely have a great home crowd.
Yeah, they do. It's a tough environment. So that's why I think Swain's going to be able to keep it close. But I do think Franklin pulls it out. I think that's it for the games we've got going this week. As always, parents, brothers, sisters, send in clips. Help us get this highlight video that we play at the beginning of each show a little bit bigger. And as Caleb said, if we don't cover a school that you like and you want to come on board and be one of our FYN sports reporters, come on board. I mean, it's the easy way to make money on Friday nights if you're already going to the game, and it pays pretty well. So shoot me an email or give me a call. Caleb, once again, thanks for coming on. Any last closing thoughts before we head out today?
Yeah, just like you said with the COVID stuff, man. Our show's going to try and avoid it as much as we can, folks, mainly because it's a private matter for teams, and we're not going to be one to spread information that we don't know about. And so, Hayesville's game got canceled this week. I'm not sure which team necessarily had the issue, nor do I want to know. So just, be in prayer for all our local teams and all our athletes' health and safety is first and foremost. And we'll do our best at Team FYN Sports to give you updates and keep schedules updated. Between when we record this show and it comes out, we might have a cancellation, and we'll at least let you know about that kind of stuff. We're going to do our best. It's a challenging year, once again, unfortunately. But, hey, let's just hope maybe we get a couple weeks down the road, Jake, and this huge spike in COVID that we're having is done with, and we'll be able to enjoy high school sports as we should.
Yeah, hopefully so. Thanks again, Caleb, for coming on. Caleb Tallman, this is Jake West with Team FYN Sports. That was Week 3, Western North Carolina Friday Night Pressbox.
Looking for furniture? Come by and browse our showroom or check out the endless aisle, a touchscreen kiosk with thousands of options. Need electronics, gaming computers, laptops, desktops, tablets? We have it all. OLED or QLED, 4K or high def. We have the selection to get you the TV of your dreams. And don't forget, at Circuit World, your credit is always good. So ask about our convenient payment options and 120 days, same as cash. Come see us today at one of our 5 area locations.
Hey girl, back so soon?
Yeah.
3rd time this morning.
Feeling too familiar with the bathroom these days? It's not just you.
Hey girl, look who made it 15 minutes.
At Erlanger Urology, we make it easy to talk about overactive bladder and treatments that work.
Hey, girl, you not coming in?
No, I'm good.
Well, okay. I'll be here, because I'm stuck.
Learn more at itsnotjustyou.com. Erlanger Urology.
In 1981, Reed Nicholson began selling tires out of an old barn in Mineral Bluff. Little did he know that he had just laid the groundwork for the most trusted names in automotive services in the Blue Ridge area. In 1997, Nicholson Tire Center became what it is today, holding the same values of faith, family, and great customer service. 2 locations to serve you, and the Blue Ridge location is currently expanding to offer fast service and the largest U-Haul provider in Georgia. Nicholson Tire Center, Blue Ridge, and Mineral Bluff.